Today we're going to be learning how to paint the Yarog from Wundervale games. Alright, so the first step we're going to do is we're going to have to undercoat our miniature. What I'm going to use for this is I'm going to use a aerosol can. It's called Wraithbone by Citadel. We're going to spray this all over the miniature, get a nice smooth application, and we're going to use that as the base to start blocking in our base colors. Alright, now that we've undercoated our miniature and given a smooth coat of Wraithbone all across the surface, we're going to go ahead and start applying our base colors. For the first color, what we're going to use is we're going to use Typhon Ash. This is going to give the fur just a nice undercoat. It's going to give a nice, even, smooth surface. This is technically air paint, but we're going to apply it with a brush. What we're going to do is we're going to thin it out a little bit more than normal. Get a little bit of water and mix that into our paint on our palette. I'm using a wet palette here to keep the paint at one consistency. And we're going to just apply this in probably about 2 to 3 smooth, very thin coats all across the miniature, covering the fur in entirety. All right, now that we've got our fur coat fully applied, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start working on the skin tones. For this, we're going to use Thondia Brown. It's going to be a kind of a lighter brown, a little chestnutty color. Thin it out on the palette, and we're just going to apply a nice thin layer of that across all of the skin that is exposed. And again, this is going to be best applied in multiple thin coats as opposed to one chunky coat, so be careful and just go ahead and apply that lightly across all the skin tones and then touch it up as needed in successive coats. All right, now we're going to do the skin around the face. Now here we want to be careful that we don't want to bleed onto the white that we've done, but at the same time we are going to go back in and correct any minor blemishes. So we want to be careful here, but if you make any mistakes or overshoot your brush at all, it's not the end of the world. Just take your time, run right around the rim of the lip. And you should be good. All right, now that we've got our brown set in, we're gonna block in a little bit of a Baden Black. We're gonna put this on the nails and the hooves. So just put that right along the nails. Try not to get it on the brown. And we're just gonna block that in. All right, now as counterintuitive as it seems, what we're gonna do for the eyes is we're actually going to block in the whole eye with a little bit of a Baden Black. Try and be careful so this is gonna be hard to clean up on the fur here, but we want the entire eye area covered in black. All right, that's about as clean as we're gonna get. All right, so now our next step here is we're gonna apply a thin layer of Ushabti bone on the horns and the teeth. So as always, thin down your paint a little bit to the consistency you want. And we're gonna take this and we're gonna apply it all over his horns. So it's very similar to the color of the fur, but it's slightly different and we're gonna wash it differently and it's gonna really pop into its own thing. So when you get down here, we got to watch the fur tufts. There is fur tufts coming up onto the horn and we're going to go around those. and get the whole horn. All right, and now for the teeth. So what we're gonna wanna do is all the areas inside the mouth that are not gonna be the brown of the lip, we're just gonna hit with a layer of that Ushabti bone and do it nice and smooth across the entire jaw. And that's okay if you overshoot and get a little bit onto the lip, because you can come back and touch that up later. All right, now that we've got all of our base colors blocked in, we're gonna take a few minutes, we're gonna go back over all the areas we've previously hit. We're gonna make sure we've got nice smooth coats, freshen up any areas, touch up little areas like here on the lips where we got some bleed over. We got a little blemish right there. Just take a few minutes, go through, touch up all these areas, and we'll come back to it and get ready for our washes and highlights. All right, now that we've got all of our base colors put in and we've got all the cleanup done, we're gonna go ahead and apply our first shade. So the first one we're going to apply to the model is gonna be a nice heavy coat of Seraphim Sepia. This is kind of a yellowy brown wash. And what we're going to do is we're going to just lightly spread this all across the model, all the fur areas. What you want to do is you want to apply this relatively quickly, making sure that it has time to settle into all of the recesses, but you want to avoid any like big areas of pooling. If you start to have any, just take the brush and drag it away from that area and further up into the model. And what this is going to do is it's going to add some nice shading, depth, and really bring out the details and help draw the colors together. See how we're starting to get a little bit pooling? Just tap the brush there, collect it, and we're going to drag it elsewhere across the model. All right, once we got the Seraphim Sepia all blocked in, we're gonna let that dry for a little while. It's gonna take probably about 45 minutes or so to dry. We're gonna start working on our second shade, which is going to be on the brown and the horns. This is gonna be a wash of Reichland Flesh Shade, but we're gonna apply it the same way. Just give it a nice all over coat on the brown and the horns. All right, now that we've got all of our shades applied, we're gonna leave this guy to rest for a good hour or two, because the next step is gonna be the dry brushing. And when we get to that point, we need to make sure there's absolutely no moisture left on the model when we get to that point. All right, so the next step is going to be a light dry brush of Ulthuan Gray. Gonna get a little bit of that on the brush, work it into the bristles, but get all the excess off. So you don't want to leave streaks, we just want to leave light highlights on the highest raised parts of the miniature. And start applying that lower down and work your way up throughout the model. All right, and as you can see, we started getting some nice gradients building up, nice highlights, as fur is lightened up quite a bit. So next we're gonna go in with White Scar, and we're gonna dry brush it over top of that, but only hitting the absolute highest areas to give a highlight to those highlights. Want very little of this on your brush for this stage. And it's gonna be very light. And you don't necessarily need to do this on every part of the miniature, just the very, very high areas like the shoulders, joints, the ridge of the spine, places like that. All right, now that we've got our final highlight on the fur all taken care of, we're gonna go ahead with some Riser Rust, this is an actual dry brush paint. We're gonna get all the excess off, and then we're gonna use this on the brown areas, the skin, the hands, the lips, face, areas like that. All right, now we've got our dry brush applied to the hands and feet and the face. We're gonna go in for a very light dry brush of Screaming Skull right here on the horns, just kind of clipping the outside edges to brighten those up a little bit right on the edge. And then we're going to do the inside of the horn as well. All right, next we're going to go back into our teeth here. We're going to return to our Shabti bone, and we're just going to put a light, very thin highlight on each one, on each tooth. I'm going to brighten these up just a little bit from our shade. All right, next we're gonna go ahead and highlight our hooves and fingertips. And what we're gonna do with that is we're gonna go in with a very thin layer of Dark Reaper, and we're gonna just put that right on the edges of the hooves and the nails. Just one thin line. All right, now we're gonna go into the eye with a very tiny circle of white scar, just to brighten it up a little bit. All right, and the last step here before we go ahead and varnish our miniature is we're just going to go across the entirety of the base with Mechanicus Standard Gray. All right, now that we got this guy finished, the only step left is to take him outside and varnish him. I'm going to hit him with Munitorum Varnish. It's a semi-matte flat varnish, and it's going to protect the miniature and help give it an even finish. And just like that, your Yarog from Wundervale Games is complete.